It's no secret that sometimes when you're writing about or talking about pieces of media, what you're really doing is finding an excuse to talk about the thing that's on your mind. Well, it's my most popular format of video to cover multiple series at once. Those are exactly that. To be clear, they're not easy to put together, and doing it in a cohesive and consistent way is more work than just talking about one story. But it also means that I get to talk about what I want to talk about, not necessarily the total point of view of what was written by someone else and interpreted by me. I guess I'm weird in just the right way to do that kind of thing. It's a productive way to work through my own emotions. When people comment with respect for my craft, I find it difficult to take that compliment because, well, what I do is hard work. It's also kind of what I have to do to understand what I'm feeling. So recently, as I've been feeling the pull of nostalgia a lot, I knew it was time to write. When I'm at the job I hate, my mind wanders back to the feeling of playing Pokemon Sapphire on a black Game Boy Advanced SP in the backseat of the car on rainy days, drowning out the sound of my parents fighting in the front. While I vacuum the stupid carpet that collects every single little bit of fuzz possible from my clothes, I think about how much nicer it would be to instead dump that long gone box full of Yu-Gi-Oh cards out on the floor and build a random swooshed up deck like the good old days. Even just now while writing this, I remembered how me and my brother set up a whole leaderboard for ourselves in Super Smash Bros. Melee when we were kids, generally keeping track of our wins and losses in the group matches and against the computer and so on. I always hated competing against people, and I was supposed to like being around them when I was young, so I always found some weird, non-directly competitive way to organize our activities. I don't know why now more than ever, but these memories have been coming back a lot more. Then thinking about them increases that focus as I wonder why, so I engage with them to try and understand, so I only think about them more as they're literally in front of me, and it's a bit of a nostalgic cycle. So of course I wanted to make a video about it. But I hadn't seen the Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh anime in years, and I needed a visual component to these things, so it made sense to go back to the Pokemon games for some footage and the Yu-Gi-Oh anime for that side of things. I started to try and figure out what exactly the pull of nostalgia was for these properties specifically because I have such strong feelings for them in comparison to other 2000s properties. I didn't even think about it until I was already writing, but almost all of my fond childhood memories are surrounded by these games, from summer days at home to the school playground. Of course, I watched, SpongeBob and Billy and Mandy, Courage, but that one was just kind of messed up. Ed, Ed and Eddie was there, but that was just secretly dirty. What other cartoons and kids shows and things existed? Alright, yeah, most of this stuff. I did watch at least some of most of this. But I really don't have any desire to go back and engage with these properties at all, except for quoting an occasional clip here and there. Since the pull was only for these games, there must be something distinct about them that they have, right? And so that was the thread I began to pull. Obviously, part of the pull of nostalgia is that when we were engaging with these things, the world was, as far as we knew, simpler. I remember being a child in like third grade, second grade, a low grade. And I was absolutely overwhelmed with the fact that I had to write a whole 10 sentences for a homework. Ugh. And so I used my one no homework pass on it because what an unaccomplishable task in a single night. I think that might have been my first ever panic attack that I remembered, to be honest. I was generally distraught to the point even my parents were like, okay, yeah, something is clearly wrong, and they never picked up on stuff like that. But a few years later, and I was upset that we needed to have essays that got into 5 or 6 pages, not sentences. And of course, we needed more and more citations as the years went on until eventually being forced to write a paper about the career I'd chased when I graduated was just an annoyance, not a panic attack. It changed from theoretical physics to stand-up comedy halfway through, by the way. And now my relationship with writing has evolved into, well, hang on, let's do some quick math. So for a while, my average script length was like 8 pages, and I was putting out a video a week. So that's 8 times 52, which is something like 400 plus pages every single year. And I do this for fun. That's only like 1,000 times more work than what used to make me mentally shut down. As I grew, and so did my responsibilities and my awareness of things like legacy and purpose, and, well, just generally that the future existed, every single word was less and less of a challenge compared to what I'd taken on before and to what I'd have to take on in the future. Is writing fun all the time? No, it is not, and trudging through the work that someone else directs you to do can be much easier, and even I have days where I think about submitting to that after 8 years of trying this. But that work doesn't help the world how I want to. It doesn't express myself or avoid the second death or make me think I'll be truly satisfied and not just settling. There's much more worth to writing that makes that 1,000 times more effort a lot easier. Obviously, the world wasn't actually less complex when we were kids. We just didn't have the capacity to handle everything that would come with adult life, and so hopefully such things weren't placed on our shoulders. And to be honest, I don't think anything really properly prepared us for what adult life is. Every level of schooling was talking about preparing you for the next level of schooling, and then college was about preparing you for a job, but what that really means is covering a super broad area of expertise so that you can show an ability to learn, since every single job is going to require more learning, and I have mixed feelings about how truthful all of that really is, given the constant focus on production in school conveniently gets you primed for someone else to profit from your work without question. At no point in there was anything actually prepping us for life itself, unless you count crushing a spirit and dreams as that. I guess being around others is sort of like a genuine prep for important work, since nothing great happens alone, but let's really think about that whole meeting people in school thing. Until either, for most people, 18 or 22, the social dynamic is being forced to be around people your age, and so friends come from that mutual obligation. But then once you enter the world, that obligation is gone, and it turns into, okay, have fun, you will never meet anyone again but people you work with unless you actively try to. There's nothing making you be around this large group of new people anymore. And so the school dynamic may help us for work, but might actively harm our preparations to make friends in the future, worsened only by more the drain of daily toil. The simple use of the phrase adulting is an example of this point. We're never really ready to be adults because, well, it sucks. You get a much higher level of freedom, the everything a kid dreams about, but only in theory, because a job to survive is 8 hours a day, but it's actually at least 8.5 because you're forced to spend time eating there, plus commute and prep is an average of at least another hour each day, so a job is really 9.5 hours of a day, and then daily maintenance like cooking, showering, and occasional things like laundry and cleaning is at least another hour, so that's 10.5 hours a day that aren't hours, and any other responsibility like family will drain that even further. Compare that to being a kid in summer where you just have like 15 hours of the day to do whatever the hell you want, and of course being an adult is going to be an overall depressing experience. The reason why I was feeling nostalgic for these active properties rather than the passive ones was because of what the active ones really represented. When I feel nostalgia for the Pokemon games, it's not just the games themselves. If that's all I wanted to do, I would be playing them right now instead of writing this. But that wouldn't fulfill me in the same way as it did back then. I know now that a writer can be someone who escapes the second death, but a trainer doesn't even exist to face the first one. So what I really desire thinking back on those times is the freedom to be away from responsibility, to be in things or doing things that denote responsibility, like being in a car. To me now means driving, but as a kid it meant, oh sweet, I get to play my Game Boy SP and not be told to go do something else for like 40 minutes. When I feel nostalgia for Yu-Gi-Oh, what I'm feeling isn't, oh, Blue Eyes is so badass. What I'm feeling is that I want to know so little that when I'm playing it on my grandparents' floor under puffed clouds of cigarette smoke from constant yelling, I could still have fun because I didn't know what all that meant. What I'm missing is being so young and inexperienced that the world was simple, that I wasn't concerned with purpose or how I'll be able to retire one day or if all my friends are going to drift away as they get married and have stupid children. Because of that, I'll be alone, and then I'll renege on all the work I did to try and meet people, and I'll fail at everything, and all of it, and become exactly like my lineage and die alone and without company and just another person who's existed and is gone, and that's it. I want even just a day of my life where the biggest worry I have is, oh, if I attack with my red-eyed zombie dragon, is it just gonna get killed by widespread ruin? Or if Bertha uses Earthquake one more time, I'm going to shit myself. I still play Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh to this day, but it's impossible to play them in the same way. It's impossible to recreate that inexperienced wonder of every single move or card being new and shiny. It's impossible to play them again with the same level of unawareness to the world. You can't start from level 5 again unless you wipe the team you worked so hard for after all. And this is somewhat of a tangent and also in part due to growing up in the transition to cell phones and all that stuff, but also when I was a kid and you dueled or played Pokemon or whatever, that was what you were doing. That's it. No one is picking up their phone to see what's going on outside. But now that buzz goes off and you have to check it to see if the other person is having a goddamn mental breakdown from adult pressure like I do every other day and needs help right then, or if someone's car broke down and you have to go drive them somewhere, or if, specifically for me, if I get another goddamn email to advertise a stupid product that has nothing to do with what I talk about. It is super validating to get sponsorship emails, don't get me wrong, that's a fantastic thing at the end of the day. But every single one is this stupid, copy-pasted piece of shit about how I could capitalize on this great opportunity to monetize my brand, which is code for, please scam your audience so we can profit too. Do y'all need some power strips that will probably short and cause a fire? Or maybe some lamps to do the same? Do you want a creative agency to regurgitate my content onto TikTok for you so you can watch it vertical? I have already fucked myself up by monetizing my goddamn emotions, but that is not enough. I had to then use that connection I've made with people through that to try and make even more money out of it. That's what all these emails are saying. It is a constant, annoying frustration that at some point in my life, the biggest worry I had was how I would finally win a children's card game against that really good kid at school, and now every single thing we do for fun is enveloped in this bullshit hustle culture overhang where everything has to be a source of revenue because if not, you will fucking starve. How can games be as fun anymore when every other ad is telling you to start driving people's food to their houses for extra cash? Or how can we relax when our work can contact us at any goddamn hour of the night to ask for even more of our lives? How can I find value in what I do when companies who already have more money than dirt push real creatives off of platforms every day to make a little more? Of course I'm feeling nostalgic for that stupid house in a crappy dirty alley where the white paint was turned that disgusting yellow color that years of smoke brings, because back then, I didn't understand that the reason for those yellow walls was poverty that my grandparents never escaped, and that my parents never escaped enough to help them. Childhood is just an ignorance that we can never regain. And it's no secret that the nostalgic pull I'm feeling is for those simpler times then. There's no interesting way to really phrase that from the properties associated with those memories, because it isn't something about those properties, but something about the world around them. I took a couple weeks when I was rewatching Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon in the background, trying to understand what about them might have had a deeper meaning. Was there some aspect of identity since they were all games with compositional choice? It is your team and your deck in Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! After all, and that seems kind of right, but not really in a truly meaningful way. Wanting to play my favorite cards as a kid didn't prepare me for the identity panic of gender, and trying to draw some meaningful connection when I've had and am having that experience just felt so forced because it was. Having a favorite thing by itself isn't identity, it's just good branding. Maybe it's how these worlds presented struggle then. I mean, the world ending is a part of both the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and the Gen 3 onwards Pokemon games, so it's kind of funny how it always relies on what's actually just a fun game for kids. It's an interesting note of those worlds, how every single thing revolves around a simple premise like that, and one that's typically pleasurable. But some others showed me that pulling that thread only reveals that, well, people were selling a product. Everything had to relate to it because they needed every chance to make you want something new, and then a ham-fisted moral was shoved in with some crappy dialogue to hide that fact. Gee whiz, Serenity, I'm so glad your brother won that duel we couldn't even see. Now I'm not afraid of surgery anymore. So that theory was a dead end. And especially while I was rewatching Yu-Gi-Oh! Well, all I could think about was just how much the show genuinely sucked. There is almost nothing about it that actually holds up or makes it entertaining as an adult. It was just a simple, silly world that was appealing to little humans whose worlds looked the same way. As a kid, a duel really does decide the fate of the world because your world can be that small. There was no way I could actually analyze these properties. There just wasn't anything there for what I usually do. I was just looking for an excuse to say, hey, I used to really love these things and they're so important and meaningful because of that. But that doesn't make for a good or original video. I don't just want to say something you already know, like, wow, nostalgia is about simpler times, you philosopher, holy shit. And I've kind of already done that here anyway. I didn't also just want to stand here and praise things because I watched them as a kid. I like to think I work a bit harder than that. So it just kind of started to feel like a waste of time, and now I had some clips of Yu-Gi-Oh to use here and there. I think part of the reason I wanted to address it so much was because it felt like that same kind of obsession I just covered. It felt like I could slip into these properties and give up everything I love for the comfort of ignorance. Maybe I wanted to believe there was some deeper reason to it all, that all these choices and interests were indicative of something so human. But all I found was that the world is depressing, and no matter how much I scream about the human condition like that, I'm nowhere near immune to that fact either. But to be honest, another reason why I wanted to talk about stupid Yu-Gi-Oh is because, I have such a goddamn good story about how I got back into it as an adult. Now, throughout most of school, I didn't really have many friends. Sure, some were better than others, but usually it was that I'd make one a year and then cling to them until we were separated by the mandatory change each next year brought. And actually, it's always worse than I remember. My brain kind of shoves this to the side when I'm thinking back on it unless I really get into it, but the one friend who I actually managed to keep after a year changed, that was third grade, I met by asking the teacher on the second day of school, who can I play with when we were at recess? That was me, and not much was changing it when my divorced and ultra-controlling parent worked evenings, and so I had no way to get to any activities because who needs walkability? This is America, get in the car or die to a big fucking truck, you stupid child. Sometimes I feel like people find this to be an exaggeration of my awkwardness, but this is true that I would only speak maybe 1 or 2 sentences by my own choice a day. Unless I was called on or talked at in a way that needed a response, I wasn't speaking, sometimes even at home. I did have a brother, and as I said, we had some activities, but that depended on the summer, the season, when he moved out, if it was before or after, what was going on with his activities after school and different things, so that wasn't always a consistent thing to have there, even if sometimes it was better. But over time, and through activities in high school where others could transport me so I could finally do them, this eventually lessened a bit. In senior year of high school, so I had gotten a bit better at these human things. Not great or even average, but just enough that I could keep up when the kid I'd never spoken to before, but somehow had 6 out of 8 classes in a row with, turned around and said, hey, check this out, and pulled a plastic Ziploc bag of Yu-Gi-Oh cards out of his pants pocket as if he was the world's least discreet drug dealer. Of course, with something I actually like to talk about, I could just barely manage to say, oh wow, tomorrow I can bring mine in and we could duel. Now, normally after school at home, I've just kind of stayed up all night holding my beaten iPod Touch over the side of the bed, close enough to the bedroom floor that was upstairs to get Wi-Fi and watch some comfort shows. It was this intricate process of hold it down for a minute, hold it up for 5 minutes, hold it down for a minute, hold it up for 5 minutes to just get on the edge of that Wi-Fi signal. It was definitely a pain. But that night was a bit different because I opened up that big storage container of cards for the first time in years, found the tin that held my old deck, and there would be one of the only times I was excited for what would come when my eyes finally closed that night. Me and this kid shared a complete blow-off science course where as long as you finished the maybe 10 minutes of work the teacher assigned you, you could just hang out at the lab tables. Supposedly it was electricity and magnetism, but this entire senior level elective course was legitimately less than 2 classes worth of college physics. So me and him finished our work, headed over to the tables, and started playing unsleeved Yu-Gi-Oh on a matless surface with just the cards we had left over from childhood as if we were 10 again. And of course, this isn't a very secretive thing. Everyone else around us saw what we were doing, and While some of them acted uppity about it, the kid I was playing with was actually decently popular, so it wasn't outright ridicule, and a few other people had the same reaction I did to seeing this piece of their childhood again. By the next week, we had that lab table taken over by wannabe duelists, and me and him would rush through our work in every single class period where we could, turn a desk around to face the one behind it, and play with whatever time was left. It really helped that this was senior year where everyone just stopped giving a fuck. But I can still remember some of the exact moments. I'll always have a soft spot for this terrible card called Getsu Fuma, because it combined with Zombie World to let me destroy his masked hero Koga, which brought my life points down to only 100, but I was able to come back and win at that 100 value. Every single play we made was awful, and our decks were the same. You might even call them third or fourth rate, but it didn't matter because it was just an excuse to interact with people and to get out all that energy that normally just festered within me. I was looking forward to being around other people, even in school in a place I hated. Something had managed to make the awful experience of high school fun. Yeah, fun. Someone I didn't know a single thing about turned around one day and out of nowhere just provided me with the opportunity for that with a plastic bag in their pocket. Of course, not every single moment was a joyride. As more and more people joined it, it was harder to keep up with the ones who were a bit more connected to relevant play. When I was using 2 Zombie World structure decks, one of which I traded a friend a 2-liter of Mountain Dew for. Despite hating all things zombie, zombies became my favorite type in the game because it was the first deck I'd really built up to have a real strategy. I came to care for it. I wanted to do well with it. I wanted to take it beyond what it was and keep up with everyone else, so when that first guy who turned around with the cards mentioned the card store he went to and how they had anything you could want to buy, I took the suggestions of the better players and made a little list of what I needed. A set of Unizombie would really help with big plays, tuner, synchro, all that, and the Lord of Darkness was some really needed draw power. Me and one of my longer time friends who got back into this stupid game drove out to that shop with me, and I can still remember the winding hilly roads listening to the only CD in my car that my emotionally manipulative partner left there because she hated my taste in music. It was Panic at the Disco's A Fever You Can't Sweat Out. And to this day, when I hear the first half of the album, I can see the drive up and the lights, how a sunset would so annoyingly hit your eyes just as you crested over the biggest hill that was a complete drop afterwards. And when I hear the second half of the album, I kind of see it in reverse at night, how the bridge that rested just at the bottom of that hill, how pretty all the lights that sat under it looked, like each one, glowing with its own little story in that romantic way cities look at night. But that's skipping ahead a little bit. The first time me and him got there, we were, amazed. It was a store probably like 150, 200 feet deep, and along the entire length were cases full of expensive cards for every major game, and behind that shelves of every single set for all those games, new and old alike. And then the entire rest of it was taken up with identical matching rows of tables and cheap chairs. It was room for at least 100 people, maybe even 150 people. But as some broke kids, we just handed the person at the counter our lists with some anticipation to get new cards and go back to his place or play or whatever. We'd never been to a place like that before, so you assumed you just bought stuff and left. But as we were planning that, she mentioned that on Tuesdays they had tournament play for Yugioh. This, though, well, it wasn't really appealing to me. I knew I didn't stand a chance at the level I was on when I was getting kicked in by already irrelevant strategies at school. So we sheepishly basically admitted that we sucked at the game, and so she mentioned that these same people also came up on Fridays to play casually. Now, that sounded a lot better. I remember earlier when I mentioned being super non-competitive as a child. Yeah, even to this day, sometimes I still get little shakes from playing even just local tournaments because competition is stressful. So it sounded a lot better to have this just kind of friendly play. And especially in this paper town suburb, we wanted an excuse to be anywhere but home whenever possible. And it helped that you could pay something like $20 each month on the first Friday of the month. And if you were there on Fridays, you'd get one random card with a different colored text in a pack each week. I think it was a thing they used to do called like Duelist League or something like that. But my first one was Catapult Turtle, and it was disappointing at the time. It was super disappointing. But right now, I would so love to have that little piece of my history back. And I don't even remember what color text it was, so I can't even like buy what, 1 in 1 million chance could be the same thing. It's this weird little important moment lost to time because I never knew that it would be important until like right now as I'm writing about it. But at the time it was just this little benefit to help bring people into the store, and that solidified with us just enough that next Friday we were going to show up to a large and well-known store. When we got there past 5 p.m., the entire place was packed with people between different games, some with cards, some with figures, some with sheets of paper, but taking up almost every space. It was a lot intimidating. Of course, I wanted to play with more than just one friend again and again for the sake of variety. I wanted to get out, but I didn't know how to walk up to someone and just start interacting with them. I couldn't quite ask the teacher who was friendly enough this time. So I just asked my friend if he wanted to play each other over and over just while we were out for a change instead of like on his floor at home. But he was pretty high out of his goddamn mind from smoking weed before I got to his house, while I was at his house, and while I drove his ass there, so he was more comfortable just walking up to others to see their shiny cardboard. And so I was just kind of sitting there across from an empty seat looking at my deck again and again thinking, oh, what can I change about this? But in reality, what people do when you're in a space for a certain interest like that isn't much different from what I did as a child or what that kid sitting in front of me did with a plastic bag of old cards. You really do just walk up and start interacting. The only holdup is the barriers we learn as we age out of these properties. A shared interest is just an adult excuse to let those all down for a moment and ask, who can I be friends with? And I saw this firsthand and can only realize how much it means now all this time later. There was a pair of brothers who played at this store, an interesting duo of people who, my god, they looked so normal on the surface. It was like a couple of slices of white bread and nothing more, but underneath there was this hilarious madness and even more a true warmth. They had this ability to just be so friendly and jokey with other people so instantly. It was that way of like turning tiny details into a full conversation with jokes that became repeated little marks of closeness, all the way down to funny sounds they'd make and little mannerisms and all this stuff I can still see in my head to this day, and that makes it easier to relate to people, makes them more full, makes it easier to converse. And they were like this so much that when one sat down across from me and started talking, I wasn't making a choice to interact with someone. Someone was just taking the entire brunt of interaction's effect for me. They were good at the game and started to coach me on what I could do better with my play and my card choices in a totally non-condescending way. Some people get so uppity, they're just like, that card's bad. Like, no, don't, just be nice about it. They were so nice about it. And they'd help me know what the value of cards was so I wouldn't get ripped off. They'd show me what good trades would be for what I pulled. A game with one of them led to a game with the other, of course, because how it works when you're playing casually in these places is you normally play a match with people and then swap opponents, so that brought me closer to the people they always played with, so that when they would swap out, those new people I met, I naturally had someone new to meet again as well. In those places, you just kind of fill the space and keep playing, and eventually the little bits of you that you put into the game come into focus for each other. You eventually start to talk about why you picked a certain card or deck, what you're looking for next, and these little bits of excitement make interaction so natural and easy. You know, they know what you know, so you just go off about it. And it just keeps going from there through the entire group until months later, you're getting invited to late night dinners after everyone finishes up playing and laughing and eating stupid cheap food. You get invited to their houses to practice for events or go to new shops to check them out together. They have a party and you see even more people from their other circles, and you're playing Jackbox at 1 a.m. absolutely losing your mind over a round of bracketeering with people you just met that night and old friends alike. And some of these people I still see every single week. They're people I could still chat an entire night away with, laughing until my sides hurt in chain restaurant parking lots. The people I cried with in empty parks at midnight as we dumped the ice shoes that 20-year-olds face on each other in turn until we regained just enough composure to start cracking jokes again. They're people I asked what keeps them going in a world that so often feels like a hollow and pointless endeavor. I'm probably always going to have issues with my self-worth, That's likely apparent in my pathological need to write a goddamn essay about every single experience in my life to make it seem valuable. So even now, when I think back on these moments with so much less awkwardness in my life and so much more to offer, it all still really feels like I didn't deserve it. There was no reason I should have been able to connect with these amazing people. My parents divorced and my mom worked evenings, so my awkwardness festered in so many nights home alone, and my also awkward brother, we'd sometimes just sit there and play video games in the same room but not speak to each other, stuff like that. It was better at times, worse at times, but overall pretty awkward. And in school, I always tended to get sick and throw up this was in like elementary school, but I'd get sick and throw up almost every single day because if I don't eat, I throw up. It's weird, I don't know why. But the school put me in the latest lunch and then made me carry a puke can for when I threw up rather than just letting me eat earlier, which only now thinking back on that can I realize how genuinely that was the school setting me back socially so fucking much. No, I was not getting a chance to meet people because no one wants to be near the puke kid holding the can. And then, eventually that's forgotten when you move up schooling sometime, from middle to high school or whatever. That can pass. But then the partner I had there made me ditch all my old friends, and that relationship was genuinely so awful that when I saw a healthy one, I thought, this is supposed to feel good? I thought you were with, being with someone was pain, but you just did it because, what else is there to do in life? Eventually my life became just I guess I'll exist for this person, and it was so awful to me. I wasn't great either, but oh, Jesus Christ. What I'm saying with all this long rambling is, I had a deck that was really stacked against me in terms of making connections. There were a ton of barriers between me and the others, and I will always harbor some worthlessness from all of that. But that one thing, that one common point of fun, that stupid, silly game we all enjoyed, it tore down all those barriers and fears. Of course, it wasn't entirely. I still struggled to know if I was ever truly a friend or just a bother. But no one actually keeps a bother close. No one adds the bother to the group chat. No one gives the bother their address. I did everything friends do, and so what else do you call it, even for me? It's so strange that a children's card game beat out 17 years of not even knowing how to be human, let alone make friends. But I guess that's what the point of all of this is to say, that it isn't really that strange. It's just human. So there is something meaningful about these games that are just some rich person's excuse to make money. It's nothing that we can analyze from thinking about them, though. It's not the stretched and convoluted idea that somehow these properties deepen our identities or provide a sense of worth or anything like that. When I analyzed them, all I found was that the world is depressing. But that led me to see the value of the fun that we create. The value of a stupid game is only something that we can learn from living with them. Their value is their platform, a common point between people, the most fundamental aspect of adolescence that sucks so much to lose, that at the end of the day, we are all just these little excitable things that want to like other things and like other people. It's through the rigidity of these properties that we're able to come together around something, a fire in the desolate cold that maintains us all. They do provide some aspect of identity, but in that identity is formed in the contrast of beings. One person's favorites alone may just be a part of a property, but together they are spirited debate, friendly competition, and unique togetherness. We become diverse in search of the same thing. It's not being alone but together, but just being together. Being an adult is needing an excuse for everything you do. And stupid games, they're a goddamn good excuse. I didn't know this random kid who showed me a plastic bag of cards. But look at how much that gesture could do. It was the best excuse I've ever seen. I know that something I've struggled with for years, and even still do to this day, is meeting people. And you probably do just the same. I always feel like it would be intruding to walk up to someone in a bar or make conversation in any public space, and of course sometimes it will be. But as I've finally forced myself to be around people and meet them, I've learned that we are all searching for that thing found in the others. We are all thinking the same thing about intruding and facing the same nervousness to reach out and connect. But the funny thing is, your body being nervous about something is just it telling you that that thing is important, that it's meaningful enough to warrant such a reaction. All we need is an excuse to push past that. I have met so many people just from playing a stupid game, or having a shirt with a reference, or a cute outfit that got complimented, or even just playing an arcade game next to someone. Once, I was playing the skee-ball lane in this place that was downstairs that someone else was accidentally paying for upstairs because they have one of those apps you can pay for machines on. So later when I walked upstairs and mentioned to some people clearly struggling to figure out how to pay on that app that the one downstairs was spitting out balls for free, they realized that their mistake was why I was playing the game for free. And we laughed about that, and I threw in one more extra comment to carry on that conversation, and that led to us talking for the rest of the night. Even just last week, I was in this bar with a friend, reconnecting for a little bit, and as our conversation lulled, I looked to the side, and there was someone so nervously by the bar waiting to get their drink. And it's like there's a look, you can tell when people they're there and they want to meet someone, they're trying, but you don't quite know what to do, because I know, because I've been that person so many times. And so I was sitting there like, their outfit's great. I should walk up and just say that because I'm wearing a similar thing and it'd be kind of cool. And as I was thinking that, I watched the people next to them say that. And we were there for maybe like another hour, and I looked over and those people were still talking that hour later. Just they didn't know each other. It's just one comment turned into that. And that's such an amazing, beautiful thing about human beings, that yes, we put up all these stupid, shitty barriers, but because we put them up, we can also tear them down in a second. I'm so off script here, but like, meeting people is terrifying. It always will be. But the trick is just proximity and similarity. It's just about being there and finding the excuse, whether it's a trading card game or the immortal words, "I love your outfit." And so much more often than not, that one simple gesture turns into a conversation and connection much greater than the effort needed to push through nervousness. And eventually, if we can all do this, there won't even need to be that effort. As an adult, don't think that you can't ask the teacher who to be friends with. Just find the excuse to do exactly that in different words. And that's really where this video should end. I've been recording for like almost an hour now. I've ad-libbed and thrown in all this random stuff. That was the moral right there, the lesson in the end. It stitched the whole thing up through pangs of nostalgia to learning the world sucks to how we can make it suck less. That's the video. But I'm going to ask for a bit more of your time so I can be selfish and add one final example on to the end here. Those brothers I mentioned earlier, after a couple of years, one of them was moving away to get back to school and chase his dream career. Knowing that he was leaving soon, he had one last get-together, the exact same kind where we yelled at those intense jackpot games at 1 a.m. That they were, he named them his name BQ, replacing like the first B in barbecue. Like they all had some silly title, like I think one was like Summer Love and Love in the Summertime, which is like a song or some shit. I don't know, but it's that really specific sense of humor, and there were all these like recurring themes and patterns through all of them, where like there's always burgers and hot dogs on the grill, and he'd put his chips in the fridge so they were chilled, and then he'd put peanut butter, pickles, and hot sauce on his burger. Yes, I said they were crazy in the funniest ways. And I don't agree with the hot sauce and the pickles, but peanut butter on the burger is actually fantastic. And that's one of those little things that I learned through him that made connecting easy, and that makes connecting easier to this day, because if someone sees you put peanut butter on a burger, they go, "What the hell are you doing?" And you explain it, and it's just this kind of cool, funny moment. This thing that I will always remember to this day. And the kind of sad thing is, though, that memories are always subject to doubt, to shifting and changing. And I hate owning things I don't need, but even I can't say that having a physical reminder of important memories is undeserved because of that fact. And he knew this too. On that night, the last time we'd see him before we went to plant roots elsewhere, he prepared little speeches for the important people in his life, and to the card game nerds like us, he gave a signed copy of his favorite card. And each speech ended with, "For you, a signed secret rare Syra Dragon," and he gave it to us with a hug, and I'm holding it right now. And I cried like a baby for that entire night through every single speech from the very first word of the first one. And during mine, I wasn't even coherent whatsoever. And I cried again when I wrote these words, and again when I edited them, and like heads in my hands above this keyboard levels of crying, even now all these years later. And I'm just managing to get through them without crying right now because my business mind is saying, get through the recording, you stupid idiot. It's a very silly thing on the surface to have a signed Yu-Gi-Oh card from someone, because it's exactly like a cheesy scene you'd see in a kid's show designed to sell you on a product by making it look really meaningful. It feels like something which is made specifically to try and force emotion out of us, like a symbol of friendship or a badge of accomplishment. It feels insane to say I can cry from looking at a shiny piece of cardboard. But it's because it's more than that. It's not a single scene in a terrible TV show. It's a collection of moments. It's the fact that he had the idea to do it, ordered the cards, signed them all, and gave one to each of us with carefully chosen words. It's knowing that some of the days he spent leading up to leaving were much like what I'm doing right now. It's taking a card that's one of thousands and making it one of only tens with the stroke of a pen and the emotions of years. Stupid games are stupid games. They are nothing more than rules and paper or ones and zeros or whatever medium it is. But we're that silly species of creature that thinks too deeply about those things and makes an absurd world meaningful. And right there in that moment, he brought something inherently worthless to life in a truly meaningful way that persists to this day. It is a little piece of everything that brought us together to remind us what we would be apart, even if we still are to this day. It's the representation of everything that made my life as it is now possible. The common goal of a stupid game that kept this channel going through heartbreak and disconnect back when it was about Yu-Gi-Oh! I used to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! On here. It's the friendship that forced me out of my shell every week on the regular and still does now, and led me to the stories that have made this channel what it is. It is the proof that even as we drift away and as our lives change, it's always possible to make new connections, even in the most stupid and silly ways. That no matter what origins I faced in terms of other people, I was able to come to terms with them and move forward, and each time I do, I find more love within me for me. I think a lot that what if that kid I didn't know hadn't turned around with a big bag of cards that day? And what if the brothers had never sat down across from that lonely looking kid? There. These thoughts of the past, they are the most joyous moments of sorrow, and what else can I do but make sure that others will be able to think the same way someday? Whether I'm the moment of temporary connection that spurs them on for more, or the lifelong relationship that forces them into the world, or even just the random video that inspires them to face those things. The world sucks as an adult. Every single day we mourn our lost ignorance. But we all have the ability to break down those barriers which make it suck. It can be divorced parents or inhuman feelings or stunted skills. It will not be the same for everyone, of course, but for me, all of those factors stacked against happiness and connection, they were no match for even just the power of a stupid game.